think of ourselves as the most powerful beings in the universe, it's unsettling to discover that we're wrong. Time has come to see the world as it is.
Can we pull back the veil of static and reach into the source of all being? Behind this curtain lies this random pattern generator. You will be responsible for an escalation that will destroy everything.
In this episode, I'm going to talk about two interesting things which happened to me in the past, and also read a very short interview with a friend about some strange experiences from his past. One evening, the brownie or household fairy being directed me to a chest of drawers in my apartment, so I went through the drawers attempting to find what she was trying to point out to me. I went through every item in the drawers, but she kept responding to me in the negative when I presented each item to her. I was a bit exasperated at this point, since I had gone through every item in the drawers and she had said no to every one of them. But she kept on pushing my arm towards the chest of drawers. Finally, I asked, "What, is it behind the chest of drawers?" To this, she emphatically responded in the positive. So I pushed the chest of drawers away from the wall and found a little balled-up piece of paper. "Is this what you've been trying to point out to me?" I asked. She said yes. I uncrumpled the piece of paper and saw that it was a receipt from a Blockbuster video. The strange thing was that not only had I not been to a Blockbuster video since I moved into that apartment, the receipt was from a state far away from the one I live in, and the date on it was from a time after I had moved into that apartment. So there was no way that it had been there when I moved in. I also would have noticed a piece of paper in an otherwise completely clean and empty new apartment when I moved in. I asked her if she had somehow teleported the receipt into my apartment, and she said no, that she had nothing to do with it. She had perceived it somehow with her own senses and wanted to point it out to me since it was such a strange thing. This mystery receipt was also very, very wrinkled to a rather unnatural degree. I kept it and still have it to this day, but all the ink on it has since faded away completely, which is a bit strange as I've kept it sealed away in a secure place and away from the sun. I still have no idea how that piece of paper got there or if it means anything at all. Another interesting event I want to recount involves one of the spirits I am sexually intimate with. One night when I was sleeping with her next to me in a rented house in Orlando, Florida, I fell into a sub-sleep state and felt her energy and being very close to me, which intensified into a very strong vibration which then merged with my own being, and I felt as if we were melded together as one. Suddenly, I saw her in full physical form, naked straddling me. I could see her beautiful body bathed in a soft blue light. She took my head in her hands and kissed me passionately. Unfortunately, that's where my memory of this event stops. This was the only time I've seen one of my spirits in full physical form with my physical eyes in exactly the same way I see normal physical living people. And it certainly wasn't a dream either. Though it did have something to do with some other state of consciousness. I, of course, was also completely sober at the time. Next is a small conversation I had with a friend about some strange things he remembers from his childhood. Me: "Do you have any stories of strange paranormal things that have happened to you?" Tony: "As a child, I remember seeing a gray entity floating outside the car window. I saw it again at a restaurant with my family. I saw a floating red ring of red lights out in the country as a teenager. It was insane. Also, as a teen deep in the country, my sister and I witnessed a bright light outside our living room window. We were home alone and I went to open the door to see who drove up and there was nothing there." Me: "Can you describe the gray entity in more detail? Do you remember its head and eyes, body size and shape? Did it come across as malevolent, neutral, or benevolent?" Tony: "It was just observing and very neutral. I used to draw what I saw as a kid. It's a very cliche shape and maybe my imagination is getting the best of me, but it was very real to me and it has stuck with me my entire life. I sketched it out on my phone really quick. Oh, I used to call it Charlie. Crazy, right? His sketches of a gray human form in a robe with glowing eyes and a hood covering its head." Me: "Interesting. What you drew is very similar to descriptions of what people call shadow people, who are almost always wearing a hood, as your drawing shows, or a wide-brimmed hat. According to the lore, they watch over and protect people." Tony: "Whoa!" Me: "Yeah, they're reported by people constantly. I've talked to quite a few people who have talked about seeing them without ever hearing of them before. Some even say that they protect us against nasty alien abductions." And now, the news.
What the hell in God's name is going down here?
A man who claims to be a witness to another giant bird sighting in the Deep South came forward on Sunday. Terrell Wilson, a 44-year-old business owner from Alabama, told Cryptozoology News that the event was also witnessed by other members of his family in the woods of Marthaville, Louisiana in the spring break of 1978. "Our great-uncle Buddy and our grandfather told us that my Uncle Buddy was having some of his cattle killed and mutilated by a large bird," Wilson recalls. As kids, we were thinking that they were just trying to scare us. Wilson says that, curious about the story, he, his brothers, and cousins ventured into the woods looking for the alleged creature. So we went that afternoon through the woods to the back pasture where the cattle were. When we got to the edge of the woods, we could see the herd grazing. A few minutes later, at the back edge of the pasture, a very large, black, grayish bird came out of the woods and into the pasture. The bird, says the man, was about 100 yards away, featuring large wings and a big head, and standing on its legs, it was about 8 feet tall. It had feathers on its wings and was more foul than reptilian. The sighting reportedly lasted about 1 minute. It came and stood there for a few seconds, and then the cattle saw it and got spooked. We didn't recognize the cattle stampeding at first because we were in awe of what we were seeing. When we finally realized the cattle were stampeding, running towards us into the wood line, we took off running back towards the house, said Wilson. According to the Alabamian, the bird then decided to change paths and began flying in the same direction he and the other kids were running. Scared wasn't the word for what I was. Frightened for my life would be more accurate. So we took off through the woods, every man for himself, running for the house. I cannot remember where anyone else was. I just remember booking it through the woods. Wilson says that when he was near the house, he noticed the bird's shadow on the ground. He says that he was so scared to look up, so he kept running towards the house. It passed me and kept going. That shadow, honestly and truthfully, was at least 25 to 30 yards wide from tip to tip. Finally, says Wilson, when he made it to the porch of the residence, he was the only one there. There was no sign of my brothers or our cousin. I did not go back looking for them either. They emerged from the woods minutes later, safely screaming and yelling for Uncle Buddy to tell him what had happened. A woman claims a series of disturbing encounters with different sorts of alien creatures are taking place inside her home in Orange County, North Carolina. The unnamed woman said Thursday that even though she and her husband have experienced strange occurrences before, they were nothing like what's supposedly been happening for the past week. The events are allegedly taking place at nighttime and usually when the couple is already in bed. I have been awake when these experiences happened, so that convinced me I was not dreaming, she wrote on the MUFON website. When I turn on the light, they disappear. I have tried to take pictures, but have not seen anything on them when I have, she added. According to the woman, the entities have assorted shapes and sizes, including primates. The creatures reportedly meet at the couple's bed, and among other activities, observe the pair as they lay in it. Started with alien watching me and my husband in darkness, the other was leaning over me. The woman also claims that she has tried speaking with the beings, but that despite seeing their mouths moving, she can hear no words. These ostensible creatures, she says, appear to have some type of light projector she believes they are using in order to convey a message to the couple. The problem, it appears, is that she cannot figure out how to decipher the meaning. The first night I saw the creature, I saw a huge grid on the wall behind the TV. It had about 6-inch letters and pictures, but I couldn't figure it out before it disappeared, she explained. Same night, again a grid, but this time I heard in my husband's voice, him calling me to look, though he was asleep. I again saw a grid over his entire chest with letters and amazing drawings of various animals. Last night there were English words and phrases, but one block on the grid was a clock with the hands moving forward quickly. The clock was the only character on the grid that was both red and flashing. And reputedly, these are not the only oddities happening at the house. Insects disappearing into thin air and tangible creatures hanging on a strange organic web appear to be common phenomena taking place in the bedroom. In Pocahontas, Iowa, a man says he has photographed a creature inside an unidentified flying object. The photographer, who didn't provide a name, says he was driving home after visiting his relatives in Iowa in late October of last year when he stopped his truck at about 4:30 p.m. to take pictures of what he called a strange cloud formation. What he claims to have seen next, however, was apparently different from an oddly shaped cloud. He did not disclose the name of the road. I got out of the truck, walked in front of the truck, and noticed a fast-moving light that changed directions rapidly, he wrote on his Facebook account. After snapping a few pictures, the man claims he suddenly felt dazed as if he had been drinking, but it wasn't alcohol, he said. It was as if I'd moved at a fast rate of speed, then suddenly stopped, he explained. When he went back inside his truck, he says he began looking at the pictures he had just taken when he noticed a cylindrical object levitating a few feet over the road in one of the images. I zoomed in to see what it was. It had a hatch door open and something with 2 eyes peering at me, he said about the picture, also posted on his Facebook page. The photograph, which appears to be the screenshot of an image originally captured with an iPhone, shows the alleged hovering object. It resembles a metal trash can with a half-open lid on the top decorated with a yellow or golden stripe. Inside there was what looks like a human-shaped head with an apparent pair of eyes. The object was reportedly about 20 feet from the photographer. It freaked me out, he continued. I know we are not the only living things in the universe, but when you are less than 29 feet from ET, it gets real. It is not yet clear whether the pictures have been altered in any way. In the United States, in July 1951, Fred Regan claims he was flying a Piper Cub when his light aircraft was struck by a pulsating lozenge-shaped UFO. As Regan, who had no parachute, and his wrecked aircraft were falling through the air, he began to feel like he was being drawn upward by what he described as a sticky, clinging force. The next thing he knew, he was drawn into the UFO. Inside, Regan found himself in the presence of small, glistening beings. He described them as about 3 feet tall and looked like huge stalks of metallic asparagus. The beings somehow spoke to him in English and apologized for the accident. They then gave him a medical examination, found that he had cancer, and removed it in exchange for the trouble they had caused him. The beings subsequently deposited Regan, unconscious but without a single bruise, in a farmer's field near the wreckage of his aircraft. It should be noted that, after falling several thousand feet, the engine had embedded itself 6 feet into the ground. Less than a year later, in May of 1952, Regan died at the Georgia State Asylum for the Insane. The cause of death, according to a newspaper report, was degeneration of the brain tissue due to extreme atomic radiation. Regan's bizarre story sat unpublished in the files of the editor of the English journal Flying Saucer Review for more than a decade, but while Regan's account had seemed too preposterous and fantastic in the 1950s, by the late 1960s it had acquired a rather prophetic ring, as it possessed many features that had become rather commonplace in such accounts. On October 11th, 1954, at 0130 hours in Duncourt Village, France, farmers awakened by a whistling sound saw a flat object land near the woods. It soon rose very fast vertically and flew away. The ground was found calcined. Samples were taken by police officials for analysis. On October 11th, 1954, at 0300 hours in Acquigny, France, 2 men riding motorcycles saw a bell-shaped craft about 2.5 meters high, hovered 1 meter above the Évreux-Louviers railroad line, and the lower part was ring-like. The object gave off reddish and greenish sparks. A burst of orange light was seen as it jumped about 10 meters high, then it remained motionless for about 1 hour, during which time a third witness joined the first two. It ultimately turned brighter and flew away toward the east. On October 11th, 1954, at 0415 hours, near Chambon-Fougerolles, France, Baptiste Jordi, who was making the daily collection of milk, was suddenly stopped as the engine and headlights of his truck died. He got out and saw a light above him. After it crossed the road, the headlights came on again and he was able to restart his truck. On October 11th, 1954, at 0420 hours, in La Conche, France, Mr. Labonde was driving at the intersection of D14 and D104 when he was followed by a sort of luminous globe surrounded with a reddish glow about 2 meters in size. It stayed within 25 meters of the car. On October 11th, 1954, at 0430 hours, in Saucier, France, Monsieurs Gallois and Vigneron, who were driving, felt an electric shock as the car headlights died. Then they saw a craft in a pasture 50 meters away. It was cylindrical, fairly thick, and 3 dwarfs were standing close by. No light was seen except a small reddish point. Both witnesses were paralyzed until the craft left. A third witness, Mr. Chalmieux, had seen a lighted object fly over the woods at La Querie. Now, in Beira, Mozambique, orange disc-shaped UFO landed and 4 small entities ran away when the craft exploded, 5th April 1960. Now, in Nepal, Mount Everest, Polish climbing expedition led by Andrzej Zawada found Yeti footprints at about 17,600 feet, February 1980. In the area of Everest, trekker Janusz Tomaszuk saw Yeti over 6 feet tall, 1975. In the Himalayas, Edward W. Cronin Jr. and companions camped at 12,200 feet, found tracks of large creature, possibly Yeti, which had walked through their camp overnight, 18th December 1972. In the Hinku Valley, British climbing expedition led by John Edwards heard strange scream and found footprints, possibly made by Yeti, at 17,250 feet, November 1979. Near Khumbu Glacier, Lord Hunt's expedition found and photographed Yeti tracks 14 inches long, November 1978. Lord Hunt has seen Yeti tracks several times over 30 years and heard high-pitched cries. In Machhaputre, mountaineer Don Willens saw possible Yeti while at 13,000-foot base camp when climbing Annapurna. He saw a black ape-like shape bounding along in snow and pulling at tree branches, June 1970. Marche, near Ferici, girl tending yak herd was knocked unconscious by Yeti, 4 to 5 feet tall and hair-covered, which also killed the yaks, July 1974. At Zemu Glacier, N.A. Tombazi saw Yeti walking upright, stooping to pull at dwarf rhododendrons, and later found footprints 6 to 7 inches long at 15,000 feet, 1925. Lord Hunt saw tracks at 19,000 feet, 1937. Sherpa Tenzing Norgay saw tracks on Glacier, 1946. Now moving to the Netherlands. In Amsterdam, poltergeist outbreak, 10 days in April to May 1919. In The Hague, poltergeist outbreak, October 1926 to April 1927. In Vorstenbosch, 3, 11, and 12-year-old children saw an apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary, 27th June 1947. And at Zandvoort, sea monster sightings, 1906. In New Caledonia, in Noumea, sea monster sightings, 22nd September 1923, and elsewhere in the islands on 20th June and 30th September, also later, September 1929.
What the hell in God's name is going down here?
That was a public service announcement designed to scare the shit out.
He was abducted by aliens earlier this afternoon.
That little girl got lost under the bed. She went into an alternate dimension.
I'm going to read some more from the book Cosmic Voyage by Courtney Brown. Both my monitor and I have heard many reports by abductees claiming that at least some ETs are from a world in the Pleiades star cluster. We have never been sure exactly where this information came from, if indeed it was something other than an unsubstantiated rumor. Neither of us knew whether to consider any of these reports as credible. Nonetheless, and mostly as a test, we decided to remote view the Pleiades star system in search of sentient life. As it turned out, it was very much worth the effort. The preliminaries indicated strong energetics and hard artificial structures. I am getting a lot of very bright light, bright white and yellow, lots of energetics as well. The temperatures seem to include hot and fiery. I taste something burning and smell smoke. I am also hearing some crying. Wherever I am, it feels massive, airy, with lots of energetics, radiant, and round. Somehow this feels important and weird. Stage 3. I am sketching a horizon, something burning on the ground and something very bright in the sky. Move to stage 4. Okay, I am in the Matrix. I am still getting that sense of light, burning, and high temperatures. Whatever it is that is round and fiery is in the sky. I am on the ground now. I am detecting two types of beings. One type is on the ground and the other type is in something in the air, perhaps a vehicle. There is intense work activity going on now. The beings in the air near the light are more advanced than the ones on the ground. That light is bright. I can't figure out what the beings are doing near it. It may be that they are in some vehicle near it, but every time I look up I am struck by how bright the light is. Focusing on the ground for now. There is dirt, grass, and humans wearing normal American-type casual clothing. Let me check that out. Yep. Pants, socks, shoes, the works. The humans are quite upset. There's a lot of fear here, plus crying. It seems that the humans are quite dazzled by and afraid of the light object or thing in the sky. Still with the humans on the ground, they seem to be a family unit, a man, woman, and child. The child is the one crying. Looking up now and following the other beings. These beings are very advanced. They are in an object, not in the light thing. I am moving inside now. The object has a round interior. I see the beings now and am moving in close to take a look. These folks seem like grays. Courtney, go to stage 6, make a timeline. Place the target time on the line, then place the present time. Pause. Now place the year 2000. I placed this here slightly later than the target time. Next, go to the Matrix. Now, cue for any significant near-past events relating to humankind. It seems that humans migrated here. What about the crying? The crying may be in response to the light object's appearance. At least the humans are looking up while they are being upset. It could be that they are upset about the vehicle with the grays, however. Whatever it is that they are upset about, it has to do with something in the sky. Describe the people. Physically, they have white skin. They seem like farming people, but not primitive. They are comfortable, and perhaps they live in or visit a nearby city or village. You know, they really seem like Americans. Go back to what is in the sky. There is either one very bright vehicle in the sky, which I do not think is correct, or two separate objects, one very bright and the other a vehicle. It is hard to tell since the bright thing dominates the perspective so much. Whichever it is, the vehicle is over the people on the land, and I sense that the beings in the object wish no harm to them. Cue on the intent of the beings in the vehicle. The beings in the object are here on a mission. This is a regular job call for them, somewhat routine. I should go back inside the ship. Instead, cue on the concepts, other places, and times visiting. Doing that now. Wow. I just got whipped across a large distance. It felt like being jerked on a string. I am now about 1,000 miles off the surface of an Earth-type planet. There are clouds, water, oceans, and land. My, it is a beautiful planet. The original target and the second seem to be separated by time, space, or both, and perhaps a lot. On your stage 6 diagram, put a small circle on the paper for the location of this new planet, then put a circle on the paper where it feels correct for the location of the original target. He pauses while I do this. Now with your pen, probe the circle for the new planet and tell me how many suns it has. There is just one. Okay, now probe the circle for the original target and tell me how many suns it has. Gosh, there are two. A large yellow sun and a smaller white dwarf. How can that be? We do not analyze. Stay in structure, Courtney. Go back to your stage 3 diagram once you had the bright object in the sky. Probe the object and dump the data in your stage 6 matrix. Hold on. If I look up, it appears to be a fireball. It is emitting lots of energy. It is bright, brighter than our sun. Let's take a break. Fax me your data up to this point and then call me back. Okay, call you in a few minutes. Resuming. Courtney, I want you to get more information about the people on the land at the original site. Going there now. I am with the people again. They cannot perceive my presence. It is a family, a man, woman, and child. Again, the child is crying. They have hair. They look and feel entirely human and, again, even American. The man has a beard, a large woolly beard. The woman has blonde hair. The clothing is colorful. The temperature around here is very comfortable, warm. The man is very confused right now. He really does not understand what is going on. Okay, now cue on the beings in the object. These are Greys. They know about the humans, of course. This is weird. The Greys know that I am here. They have their attention on me right now. In fact, they are attempting to feed me information very fast. It seems too fast for me to handle. The Greys have become a bit confused now, like something else is occupying their attention. There seems to be a bit of a disagreement among them. It could be they are trying to figure out how to feed me information. Ah, things seem to have smoothed out. The people on this world are from Earth. The Greys brought them here. They have been transplanted. The humans do not know everything. They do not even know where they are. What is the reason for the transplanting? Human survival is at stake. A new location is needed away from Earth's climactic disasters. Continue your probes, find out more. The transplanting is still going on at the target time, but it is not yet happening at our current time. At the present, there are only preparations. They are getting a Class M planet ready while waiting for humans to self-destruct. What else is being transplanted? Genetic material is dominant. They need as wide a selection as possible of genetic material to ensure the survivability of a better, more advanced gene pool. Cue on the needed genetic changes. There needs to be a better connection between spirit and body. The current genes downplay this. The original gene structure was necessary for survival in our past, but newer modified genes are needed for growth and survival at this later stage. Okay, Courtney, let us end here. Put down the ending time. Done. Well, what in heaven's name was that? Actually, it was the Pleiades star system cultures. There was a very long pause in our conversation. You're not kidding? Honest, that was it. Do you realize what this means? Courtney, I have been in this business so long that nothing surprises me anymore, but this is really something. The target for this session led us to a Class M planet orbiting a binary star system around 82,000. Before this session, I had doubts as to whether life could exist within the radiation parameters of a two-sun system. It is possible the Greys have placed some sort of environmental protection on or near the planet to ensure its habitability. In the near future, there will be humans on this planet who will have been transported there by Greys from Earth. I do not know if other Earth humans will be aware of this when or after it occurs. It may be done quietly, in which case all information about this new world and its inhabitants will have to come through remote viewing. At target time, the humans are in family groups. They are frightened and confused, and they do not know where they are. The purpose of the transplantation is to preserve the genetic stock of humans, in the sense of maintaining as wide a gene pool as possible. Some genetic manipulation will be needed later to enhance the mind-body connection for a future breed of humans. This seems to be due to our current destructive tendencies, which are driving the global population in the direction of planetary-wide ecological and climatic disasters. Thus, it seems that some humans will be space-lifted to a safe haven while the rest of humanity slugs it out back home. This was the first time I received information directly from a member of the Greys regarding future planetary problems for humans, but I still do not know the timeline for these impending disasters. My monitor has told me of other remote viewing data that suggests that Greys are also engaged in collecting plant and animal specimens from Earth at this time. If this is true, one possible reason could be biological needs in terraforming the planet and the Pleiades system. I personally wonder how many species in our galaxy have the benefit of such interstellar midwives as the Greys in their evolution. More importantly, what will happen to those humans who remain on Earth? Will they simply perish, or will they continue to evolve in a fashion that is different from their then separated cousins in the Pleiades?
Time has come to see the world as it is.
I'm going to read a selection from the book Mama Lola, A Voodoo Priestess in Brooklyn by Karen McCarthy Brown. On May 26, 1984, the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, I found myself nursing my 14-year-old Volvo along the clogged interstate highways between Cambridge, Massachusetts and Brooklyn. The great-granddaughter of Joseph Bin Mavant had commanded my presence, not to celebrate Memorial Day, a holiday that understandably has little meaning for Haitian immigrants, but to participate in the birthday party of the voodoo spirit Azaka. As a member of the fictive kinship network, a Little Leaf, grafted onto Alud's family tree, it was important that I be there. I was exhausted by the time I reached Brooklyn. My loft in Lower Manhattan and Alud's row house in Fort Greene are 20 minutes apart, and ordinarily I had only the time it took to make the quick trip across the Brooklyn Bridge to accomplish the considerable shift in worldview necessitated by movement between these two centers. In contrast, the trip in May 1984 took 6 tedious hours. Responding to Alud's telephone summons, "We going to have a birthday party for cousin Zaka. You coming? You got to come." It had taken a lot more energy than usual. I was on sabbatical leave from my teaching position and had sublet my New York apartment and moved to Cambridge. "You know I'd love to come," I had said when Alud called, "but that's a holiday and there will be a lot of traffic on the highways." "Yes," Alud had replied in a small voice. A lot of car, uncomfortable in the silence that followed and ever eager to please this momentous force in my life. I had taken a deep breath and committed myself. "But of course I'll come anyway." "Good," she responded, then, forgetting which world I was occupying at the moment, I asked, "Can I stay at your—" "Karen!" she cried. "How come you asked me that? Oh, come on. Karen, what's the matter with you? You always asking me, can you stay? What you got to do that? This is your house. You stay anytime you want. Karen, what's the matter with you? Don't you do that to me, okay?" "Well, Alud," I replied in the tone of a child unjustly accused, "I just thought you might have a lot of other people staying there since—" "I don't care," she cut me off again, but this time with warmth in her voice. "I don't care. Even you got to sleep on the floor. Even I got to make a bed on top of my closet. I always find a place for you, sweetheart. Don't you worry." Kumar and Michael, Alud's and Maggie's young sons, were jumping around the car before I even turned off the engine. "How you doing, Karen? Maggie said you was coming. We've been waiting for you." Alud's daughter, Maggie, was leaning on one arm in the open front door. "Hi, baby. I thought you was never going to come. I was getting worried about you. Come on inside. I just got home myself. We don't even start to make the altar yet. Come on, you can help. Give me that suitcase. Mommy's downstairs." Basking in the warmth of their greetings and still spinning from the road, I went down the dark staircase to the basement level, the center of family operations. The rooms in Alud's home are arranged like a string of railroad cars. Her kitchen, with one small window looking out on Maudie's yard, is in the back of the basement, and her altar, the tiny room in which she does consultations, reads cards, and prepares herbal treatments, is in the front. A combination living and dining room fills the space between kitchen and altar. A new dining room set, a table and chairs, a glass front china cabinet, and a massive sideboard takes up every foot of space in front of the door to the altar room. Shelves holding shiny trinkets and floor-to-ceiling strings of multicolored beads separate the surprisingly formal dining area from the random collection of chairs and tables that defines the social center of the basement floor. A large color television, rarely turned off and rarely adjusted to remove the green hue it imparts to human skin, presides over this section of the room where the family gathers, where guests are received, and where clients wait their turn in Alud's inner sanctum. This is also the room where birthday parties for the spirits are held. Downstairs, I found Alud looking morose, slumped at a small table, her chin cupped in her hand. She noted my arrival only by blinking when I walked between her and the television set. I kissed her on the cheek and offered a standard Creole greeting. "Long time I don't see you. Give me news of yourself." Alud raised her great round shoulders and then let them drop with a sigh. "I'm okay," she responded in barely audible English. "Alud," I said, also switching to English. "What's the matter?" "Karen," she snapped, "I don't feel good, okay?" Then after an awkward silence, she added, "Maggie say I ate too much salt. I don't taste it, but she tell me I put too much salt in my food. I got too much salt. That's what I got. Look!" She displayed her right ankle, swollen beyond its usual girth. Not until 10 o'clock in the evening did the construction of the altar for cousin Zaka begin. A low cabinet pushed against one wall was cleared off, and a smaller table placed next to it at a right angle. These two altars were then covered in white sheets. Wielding a heavy staple gun, Maggie attached more white sheets to the walls behind the tables and the ceiling just above. Someone brought in an armful of leafy branches from the backyard, and the branches were stapled in small bunches to the sheets behind and above the altars. Because this was a feast for an agricultural spirit, one closely tied to the curative powers of leaves and roots, it was appropriate that his tables were decorated with greenery. Next, familiar battered suitcases were dragged out of storage so Maggie and I could search among their contents: scarves of many colors, paper streamers, cardboard leprechauns and skeletons, bells, balls, and shamrocks, for decorations that would please Cousin Zaka. We selected accordion streamers in Azaka's favorite colors, blue and white, and draped them in graceful crisscrossing arcs across the ceiling of the niche. Then we pulled out a dozen scarves in the colors of Alud's other major spirits, those who were also likely to make an appearance that evening, and pinned the scarves to the front of the altar cloths. From meager materials, we had begun to create the impression of dense opulence, the mood of voodoo altars. Bottles of Haitian cola and liquor, rum, gin, tequila, scotch, were lined up across the back of the tables. Plates of cookies and candy were added, and a few pieces of wrapped candy were strewn across the tables. Bananas, grapes, apples, and cherries formed a mound around a plump pineapple in the corner of the largest table. 3 fancy cakes from a Brooklyn bakery were also placed on the altars. One was frosted in blue and carried the message, "Happy Birthday, P. Azaka." The abbreviated version of Papa Azaka's name did not entirely please Alud. The action soon shifted to the kitchen. Corn was dry popped and mixed with freshly shelled peanuts, pieces of cassava bread, and a few hard candies. This mixture was gathered in a large flat basket, the kind Haitian peasants use for winnowing grain, and placed on another white cloth beneath the smaller altar table where Azaka's special food was kept. Several simple boiled puddings were prepared and given time to cool. It is ruled that nothing hot can be placed on a spirit's altar. Voodoo altars are texts. They are for the reading. They contain a wealth of information about the nature of a spirit or group of spirits as indicated in food preferences. At the simplest level, some like their food very spicy, whereas others consume only sweet things. Some drink liquor, some do not. The central theme for Azaka's table was composed from the favorite foods of the Haitian peasant farmer. Among other things, Azaka loves sugarcane and cassava bread. In assembling a table of humble foods for Azaka, Haitians in New York seem to evoke the cuisine of a simpler time, when the spirits pervaded everyday life and were readily accessible. Ironically, in New York, the sugarcane stalks and cassava bread used as mnemonic devices are both difficult to find and expensive. The immigrants' attempt to ground memory in the concrete details of a simple economy has actually led to the creation of an arcane food language. Before long, 2 large pots, one of rice and black beans and another of cornmeal and black beans, were bubbling away on top of the stove. A pot of chaka, a thick, delicious peasant dish made from large kernel corn, kidney beans, pig's knuckles, and coconut, had been made earlier in the day. When I lifted the pot lid to look at this favorite dish of cousins and mine, Maggie cautioned me. "The thing about chaka, you don't never say, that looked good, and look at it like you're going to eat some, or the whole pot turns sour. After you give it to cousin, he can give you some, and then you eat it. No problem. But if you taste it first, or say, oh boy, I'm going to eat some of that, then the first time you put it in your mouth, it's going to taste awful. The whole thing going to be spoiled." Food is the major marker of the success of parties, the length of journeys, the passage of time, and of life. Few stories about important events in the near or distant past do not include catalogs of what was eaten. Eating is more than a practical life-sustaining activity. It is the means of identifying the in-group. "She eat in my house," Alud said, introducing me to people in Haiti. "And it is the means of maintaining the same group. You eat with people, you always have food," Alud says. "You eat by yourself, you don't have nothing." On the other side of the coin, fear of being poisoned by taking food from the hand of strangers, or persons who harbor ill will, is a pervasive theme, especially among rural Haitians. Few people in Haiti grow to adulthood without knowing hunger intimately, and Alud is not in that minority. The fact of hunger has had no small influence in shaping Haitian culture in general, and her life in particular. Thus, it is not surprising that food has become a metaphor for happiness and well-being. It took me years to realize that when Alud announced, "I don't eat today," it meant that she was upset or depressed, and not that she had forgotten the half-loaf of French bread with margarine I had just seen her consume. When I travel with Alud, it is easier to see the connection between food and anxiety. When she is anywhere but home, Alud obsesses about food. She seems to be constantly hungry and constantly worried that no one will feed her. When food is provided, she picks at her meal and rarely admits that she enjoys it. Food is also an issue in how Alud relates to her spirits. She feeds her spirits on a grand scale once a year at their individual birthday parties and, on a lesser scale, daily with libations and other small offerings. Without this nourishment, the spirits would not, and perhaps could not, work for her. Providing food and creating the elaborate ritual contexts in which that food is presented to the spirits constitutes the most important work Alud does for them. "Travail, travail," work, oh work, is the single repeated line of one voodoo song. Alud's birthday parties for the spirits are hard work, requiring a considerable expenditure of time, money, and effort. In the midst of the high-pressure life of New York City, where the survival of Alud and her family depends on a constant juggling of scarce resources, ritual duties sometimes become onerous. The party for Cousin Zaka in 1984 was one occasion when the demands of life in New York came into direct conflict with the demands of the voodoo spirits. In fact, this conflict, and not an excess of salt in the diet, was eventually revealed as the source of Alud's illness. Sunday afternoon, after Cousin Zaka had been called to direct the dismantling of his festive table, after the floor had been swept clean of the last trace of ritualizing from the night before, and every pot in the kitchen had been washed and put away, Maggie and I relaxed with a cup of coffee. She told me, "Cousin made Mommy sick because he think we not going to give him no party. Because now I'm working, I don't got no time to be running around buying thing for birthday party for the spirit. Before, when I wasn't working, we start 2-3 days before. We buying, fruit, candy, all kind of a thing for the party. But now I work. We didn't buy nothing till I get back this afternoon. And Cousin just think we not going to do nothing for him this year. So he made Mommy sick. What do you think she gonna do?" Maggie continued with real anger in her voice. "Taking care of those kids all day long. She can't even go outside." Then with a smile and a shrug of her shoulders, Maggie added, "When we build the altar and Cousin see what we do for him, then Mommy start feeling okay right away. But it was him that made her sick." More than 2 years earlier, at another voodoo feast, Alud had made an impromptu speech. Standing in front of elaborate, food-laden tables, she began by noting how tired she was and how much work these parties were. She said that she had originally decided not to have a birthday party for Ogu, the guest of honor that evening, thinking that it would be enough to arrange for a mass to be said for St. James, the Catholic saint identified with Ogu. In fact, she had planned to stop having parties in New York altogether and to hold one large feast for all the spirits every 3 or maybe every 7 years in Haiti. That was what she had decided, but the spirits said, "No, make a table!" And so, once again, here she was, and it was just too much. Ceremonies for the spirits do require a great deal of work. It is also true that those who stage voodoo parties have a vested interest in broadcasting and sometimes exaggerating the amount of effort and money involved, for the size of the undertaking determines the value of the gift being offered, the iwa. I was aware of this tendency, and it was initially difficult for me to recognize the genuine frustration from which Alud spoke. Her soliloquy that night moved into a somewhat romantic version of how much easier things were in Haiti. "New York is not Haiti. When you have a party for the spirit in Haiti, you have people to help. I just sit. Someone say to me, 'Mommy, Lola, can I get you a cola?' You send him out to get ice. He keep the 5 centime left over, but that don't make no difference. You got somebody who sweep up after, make everything nice. All you got to do is give that person something to eat. You don't even got to pay. You can find whatever you need. Things not so expensive, and you always got people to help. Here, I got to make the table, make the food, then clean up myself. Here somebody say, 'Can I have some soda?' They take the glass and just put it under the chair. And they say again, 'Give me some soda.' No, I don't like that." In addition to sending the point to thoughtless guests and advertising her own efforts, Alud was speaking to a real tension in her life. A crisis that same evening in 1982 underlined the way she was caught between opposing forces. Preparations for Ogu's party had gone on amid more chaos than usual. Maggie was pregnant with Betty and was having difficulty with the pregnancy. The summer day had been hot and sticky. With no school, the children had been constantly underfoot. In the hubbub, no one had remembered Legba, the guardian of doorways and barriers. A small statue of St. Lazarus, representing Legba, stands near the door at the end of the narrow hallway leading from the foot of the basement stairs to the front of the house. In preparation for the ceremonies, this door is opened to allow passage for the spirits. A candle is lighted and small offerings for Legba are left at the threshold, but all this had been forgotten. When Alud and her ritual assistants processed to the Legba shrine, singing, Papa Legba, ouvri barriere, or Papa Legba, open the gate. As they do at the beginning of every such event, they found a dark hallway and a closed and locked door. Alud retreated into stony silence. Tension quickly spread throughout the group, and before anyone knew what was happening, Legba had possessed Alud. Her tremendous frame plunked itself down in the middle of the narrow hallway, and the venerable spirit riding her cried and whined about his mistreatment in the thin, cracked voice of one of the ancients. Tears sprang to Maggie's eyes too, but she quickly covered them with a brusque, take-charge attitude. With one arm around the whimpering Legba, Maggie sent people scurrying to fetch the things needed. In short order, the large votive candle beside Lazarus was lighted, the door was opened, gin and molasses were poured at the threshold, and an egg was broken there. Legba was reduced to sniffling and trembling as he watched these frantic attempts to recover from an inauspicious beginning. It took some time before the small group of ritualizers returned to the crowded area around the tables and continued with the business of formally greeting the spirits one by one. It took even longer before the ominous feelings generated there gave way to the more celebrative mood that usually characterizes these events. After this, in spite of her desire to simplify, Alud actually redoubled her efforts around the individual spirit feasts. One of the problems she confronts is assembling a large enough group to serve the spirits properly. An enormous amount of energy and anxiety is involved in building and maintaining the core group that attends these ceremonies and thus constitutes Alud's voodoo family. In rural Haiti, the group that ritualizes together also lives and works together on the land. There, family is a given. In New York, however, family ties must be earned and carefully managed. Work pressures, distance, the problems of late-night travel in New York City, even a different sense of time, now calibrated like money in order to be spent wisely, all these elements make it difficult to maintain the group necessary for effective rituals. Voodoo rituals are events that cement community, but daily life in New York bombards the Haitian immigrant with messages that counsel self-interest and self-reliance. Alud has several blood relatives living in New York, but even the bonds with these persons are not as durable as they would be in Haiti. To balance the centrifugal force North American values exercise in the Haitian community, Alud moves in two directions at once. Through her service to the spirits, she retraces the pathways back home in order to shore up weakening bonds of blood and friendship, but at the same time she reaches out to new people such as myself. She uses her spiritual skills to pull us into the family, into the network of gifts and obligations that constitutes her survival strategy. New York is not Haiti, as she said. Events must be planned far ahead of time, and still no more than a handful of people may show up to sing and clap their hands for the spirits. Having enough participants is not the only problem. Some of the foods necessary for the voodoo feasts can be obtained only with considerable effort. For example, the Puerto Rican markets in the Bronx are among the few reliable sources for live poultry, and a trip to the Bronx from Brooklyn can easily take 4 or 5 hours. Alud is constantly juggling debts and favors among the members of her voodoo family in New York, those she has healed, those she has initiated, and those friends and family members who regularly enjoy her parties for the spirits. Who can bring flowers? Who can bring rum? Who has a car and can drive to the Bronx? You can't carry no live rooster on the subway. Such difficulties had prompted Alud's decision to reduce her ritual labor. But the spirits said no. She knew they were saying no, because as soon as she made the decision to cut back, everything she put her hand to went wrong. Bad luck is understood as an expression of the displeasure of the spirits. Bad luck can be anything from a serious illness to problems with money, love, or work. A string of bad luck means something serious is wrong. Until the situation is clarified and steps are taken to remedy it, everything feels threatening. In the final analysis, there is one major threat, one overwhelming fear, that of being alone, of being without family. For Alud, family is a continuum running from the disparate groups who attends voodoo parties at her home to the most elemental family, that of the ancestors and the spirits. When connection to the latter group is threatened, the accompanying fear accelerates. Alud keeps altars for the voodoo spirits in her home and expends considerable effort in feeding and nurturing them because she needs their love and protection around her daily. Relationships with spiritual families, however, are not any easier or less complicated than those with human families. As long as persons live and breathe, they stand in the position of children in relation to the spirits. In this, Alud, though a manbo, is no different from anyone else. In Haiti, small children are extravagantly loved and indulged. But this indulgence ends when the child is old enough to make a contribution to the ongoing life of the family. Children's work soon becomes necessary to the family, and disobedient children are disciplined. In many families, children are beaten, at times severely. Showing respect for the elders and complying with their will are the only ways a Haitian child can remain in good standing within the family. In an illustration of the negative side of food symbolism, unruly children are threatened with destruction by evil spirits. The Lao Gao, or werewolf, going to eat you. Children are deemed more likely than adults to catch a malevolent spirit sent against a family. Only the continued spiritual vigilance of the elders protects them from such a fate. Because the work Alud performs with the spirits is as essential to their well-being as the contribution of Haitian children is to the well-being of their families, the spirits also deal with her through dire threats and severe punishment. The same standards of respect and obedience that define the relation of Haitian children to their elders dictate the terms on which Alud must relate to the spirits. She never talks about worshipping the spirits, rather does she speak of believing in them. Existence and essence are the theological preoccupations of great Atlantic culture. Allude speaks about the spirits in the way common to Haitian people. I serve the spirit, she says. On that Memorial Day weekend in 1984, it was nearly midnight when the cooking was finally done and the food for Cousin Zaka arranged in several kui, or calabash shell bowls. The cornmeal with beans was poured into one and left to congeal to a hard-crusted top. A mound of rice and beans filled another. A third held large chunks of firm white yam and golden sweet potato topped with wedges of avocado. The shaka was poured into a fourth, and into the last went another stew, this one made from meat and several kinds of vegetables cooked to a fragrant, rosy mush. Once these were cool, they were placed beneath Azaka's altar, where they stayed until early the next morning when most of the ritualizing was over. Only then were the bleary-eyed people slumped in chairs in Allude's basement turned temple fed from Azaka's ample stores. At 11:30, Maggie and I were still clattering around the kitchen. The early arrivals for Cousin's feast were quietly watching television with Allude. An outside observer of this sleepy domestic scene might have thought it an end of an eventful evening rather than the beginning of an all-night ritual drama. But around midnight, things began to happen quickly, and by 10 minutes after the hour, every chair was full, the television was turned off, and events were underway. Maggie was checking and rechecking the tables, the altar room, the kitchen, to be sure nothing had been forgotten. 25 people were talking, laughing, greeting one another, and catching up on the news of their lives. About 24 people took part in this feast. The first to arrive were other Nambo, Allude's other women friends, with whom she routinely exchanges support and assistance in ritual activities. Madame Francois and Gladys are regulars at her parties, and as usual they arrived laden with contributions. A bunch of basil leaves, a cake, flowers, a package of candles, more cassava bread. Robert and his family are the other most frequent participants. Robert is a North American black man in his mid-30s, for whom Allude performed a preliminary initiation in the summer of 1981. At the same time, Maggie and I went through other stages of the initiation process. After this, Maggie continued to function as Allude's main ritual assistant, and Robert became a regular second-level helper, often spending the entire day before a ceremony, running errands for Allude, and lending a hand whenever he was needed. Other guests at Azaka's 1984 birthday party included Marjorie and her boyfriend, Kevin. Kevin is a drug counselor at a high school. Marjorie, who has the primary connection to Allude, is a native of Grenada, in her late 30s, who works for the New York City public school system as a teacher for emotionally disturbed children. Marge first came to know Allude when she turned to her for help. Marge's husband had left her and had taken their 2 children back to his native Ghana against her will. It also took Allude 2 years of practical as well as spiritual labor to see that the children were returned to their mother. Gertrude, or Mrs. Legrand, as she is almost always addressed, arrived soon after Marge and Kevin. Gertrude, who was born in the United States, became Mrs. Legrand by marrying a Haitian, and it was her husband who introduced her to Allude. I knew this proper woman for quite a long time before she was willing to talk to me about her growing involvement with voodoo. Saoirette, a friend of Allude's from Haiti, came not long after Mrs. Legrand. Saoirette brought along her 10-year-old son. Michael spent most of the evening sitting quietly in a chair by the refrigerator, his hands folded in his lap. Jean-Pierre, Allude's oldest child, drove his family in from their apartment in Le Froc City, Queens. Other family guests include Frank, Allude's oldest brother, and Frank's Haitian wife. 2 teenagers, American black women, also attended. Poupette, a young Haitian woman with a flirtatious personality, joined the group. Eileen, a woman to whom Allude rented a small top-floor apartment, was also present. Allude wanted to help her, but there has been several arguments about unpaid rent and wine bottles that had disappeared from the basement refrigerator, and Allude's patience was wearing thin. Just after midnight, and without calling attention to herself, Allude plunked down on the low stool by Cousin's table and abruptly launched into the series of Catholic prayers and hymns that opens these voodoo ceremonies. People took a while to realize what was happening. Talk died out by dribbles, some of it continued after the ceremony had begun. Then, midway through a hymn, Allude interrupted herself. "Maggie, don't forget Cousin's hat!" Maggie hollered the length of the basement. "Robert, get the hat out of the altar room!" And then Allude quickly returned to the hymn. The Catholic prologue to voodoo ceremonies is virtually the same no matter which spirit is the guest of honor. It begins with standard songs and chants. One of the first calls on St. Peter, like Lazarus, a Catholic counterpart of Legba, to open the door to paradise. Others beg Mary, Jesus, and a variety of saints for grace and forgiveness. New arrivals from Haiti, such as Poupette, often become the vehicle for learning new songs and recalling old ones, Catholic and voodoo. Allude's frequent trips to Haiti also accomplish the same kind of liturgical checking and enriching. One of the songs sung for the Virgin Mary at this party was an example of this process. Allude had heard the song in a friend's temple on her last visit home. She had sung it as a child, but had since forgotten it. When Allude returned from that trip, she immediately introduced it into the Catholic prologue to her own ceremonies. She especially liked its ritual details. At a certain point in the hymn, everyone was supposed to drop to their knees facing the altar. The palm tree thumps, the palm tree knocks. Virgin Mary, pray for us. We are on our knees at your feet. That night, Alud noticed that I had missed the signal and was not on my knees with the rest, and she abruptly stopped the singing. Come on, Karen, come on, come on, come on. On your knees. Oh, no, no excuse. Then, without even taking a breath, she finished the song. On the ground to pray to you. As the last line died away, Alud continued to question my lax behavior. How come you don't know that song? I know that song, I answered defensively. I am never at ease when Alud publicly exhibits her authority as my voodoo mother, although I know that such displays are a routine part of the discipline for any initiate in a voodoo family. Perhaps catching my discomfort, Alud softened. You was singing? She asked. I was singing, I replied. You singing, but I don't heard you, she observed. I laughed self-consciously and latched onto the first excuse that presented itself. I don't have a good voice, so I don't sing loud. In a more natural tone, I added, Alud, you don't want me to sing loud. A great guffaw exploded from her, and with one hand planted on each thigh, she threw her head back. Karen, you too smart for me. There was laughter all around. Our little contretemps, one of several that added informality to the otherwise staid prologue, made a natural transition between the Catholic segment of the ceremony and the part with a distinct African flavor. Picking up the asan, the beaded rattle that is the emblem of the voodoo priesthood, lying at her feet, Alud began to shake it softly. The Creole songs that followed were also introductory. Taken collectively, these two standard opening sequences, one European in flavor, the other African, are called the Prière Deo, the outside prayers. The Prière Deo usually lasts from 45 minutes to an hour. When these outside prayers were completed, the mood eased, the social and ritual tempo picked up, and the main part of the ceremony commenced, the part in which the most important voodoo spirits are saluted, individually and in strict ritual order. The first to be greeted is always Legba, guardian of crossroads and doorways. Standing in front of the food-laden tables, Alud held her asan in one hand. In the other, she had a large white enamel cup of a sort common in Haiti. On either side of her were ritual assistants, one holding a candle and a bottle of gin, the other a bottle of molasses. These elements were lifted up to each of the cardinal directions in turn. Alud shook the asan sharply each time, and the group dipped at the knees and changed direction. Then, facing the larger of the altar tables, all three stepped to the right, bent their knees in a quick movement like a curtsy, stepped to the left, and turned all the way around, then repeated the same gestures in reverse, with an initial step to the left. A third time, again starting with a step to the right, the small band of ritualizers dipped and twirled. Then they headed out the door and down the narrow hallway to the Legba shrine. Throughout the salutation, all the people present sang. Translation being, Papa Legba, open the gate, Adabon, to let us come in. The next greeting was addressed to Ayazan, the ancient female spirit who is the guardian of ritual purity within the temple. Ayazan was saluted in much the same manner as Legba, although gin was not used. Ayazan drinks no alcohol. And the entire salutation took place in front of the altar tables. Libations offered to Ayazan were poured into an enamel base on the floor in front of one of the tables, a North American accommodation to the fact that ceremonies can no longer take place in temples with beaten earth floors thirsty for the gifts offered to the spirits. After Alud and her assistants had each knelt before the altar, kissed the ground, and poured water 3 times in small dollops into the basin, the cup was passed to 2 or 3 guests so they too might honor Ayazan. Other priests and priestesses are usually chosen to pour libations, but individuals who have a personal bond with the spirit being saluted may also be appropriate choices. At all ceremonies, each spirit called must be offered either 3 or 7 songs, which must follow a definite order dictated by the type of drum rhythm that would ordinarily accompany them. The verses of each are repeated until Alud judges that the spirit has been properly honored. The atmosphere is informal. For example, at Alud's voodoo parties, songs for the spirits are sometimes aborted by a knowledgeable guest's comment. That's a zippo, a rhythmic type. You can't introduce that one yet. Before sending a new song, Alud often checks with the gathered faithful. How many we sing? That song, 2nd or 3rd. At times she cannot think of another song for the spirit being greeted and will turn to a guest, usually one of the older women, and say, Come on, Madame Francois, send a song for cousin and me. Together the people possess a memory more complete than that of any individual. Consultative ritualizing, like the constant flow of ritual information between New York and Haiti, helps the community guard against forgetting. After the 3rd of Ayazan's songs ended, with the sound of the asan, the marasa, the sacred twins were saluted, and then it was time to turn to Loco, patron of the voodoo priesthood. First, however, came a short interlude devoted to baptizing the table, a moment in which Catholicism reasserted itself. In ideal circumstances, baptizing the table is the job of the prêtre savant, a type of ritual functionary who appeared in Haiti during the period following the Revolution when the Vatican refused to send priests to the new Black Republic. A prêtre savant, who is used in Haitian temples as a stand-in for a Catholic priest in the portions of the ritualizing that reiterate Catholic rites, is only infrequently involved in Alud's New York ceremonies. But the shadow of his presence persists in the rule that only men can perform rituals such as baptisms. Usually an Ugan in the crowd is asked to fill this role, although any other man can be pressed into service when needed. There was no priest at Azaka's 1984 birthday party, and the responsibility fell to Robert, who was an enthusiastic and faithful supporter during Alud's rituals. He speaks only English, but he is uninhibited about imitating the sounds of French, Latin, or Haitian Creole in the ritual context. Standing in front of Azaka's niche, Alud coached him in the proper formula for baptizing the table, handing him a shot glass filled with holy water taken from a local Catholic church and a leaf plucked from one of the bouquets on the altar. She instructed him to dip the leaf in the water and sprinkle it over the tables while saying, "I baptize you in the name of cousin Zaka Midi. I believe, I believe. Abanoche." Everyone mumbled several quick Hail Marys before moving on to sing 3 hymns for Mary. During the last one, actually addressed to Mary Magdalene, Robert was directed to pass a collection plate. Moving from person to person, he held out a plate, and each of us dropped in a few coins. This money was placed beneath Azaka's table. The group then launched into salutations for Papa Loco, chief voodoo priest. At these ceremonies, it is rare that anyone other than Alud is ridden by a Iwa. But this evening was an exception. Irma, Alud's half-sister, they have the same father, is a regular participant. On this occasion, she had come with her mother, a strikingly beautiful, even regal, 80-year-old woman who was visiting from Haiti. Loco was the first spirit to arrive that night, and he possessed Irma's mother. As the third and final song for Loco was sung, the spirit announced his presence in the old woman's head through long, trembling moans. Alud laughed out loud, obviously delighted that Loco, and especially this particular woman's Loco, had chosen to come to her feast. And I will continue this story in the next episode.
Science can explain everything if we look hard enough.
Shut up, science bitch.
Nothing is true. Everything is real. Not only is he like ruining my life, but with all this God shit that he's into, he could be ruining my afterlife.
It's a sort of interdimensional vagina that somehow appears. I can interact with it.
Fabric of the entire universe could be torn apart.
I know my mind is changing. I'm already too far gone to know what to do.